Even though it might not feel like it right now, there are actually a bunch of new Star Wars games currently in development set to release over the next few years. At the time of recording this video, we have 5 AAA Star Wars games on the horizon. And because it feels like a while since we've had any news about any of these games, today I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about all of these upcoming Star Wars games, as well as a few extra side projects and DLCs on the way. Also, let me know which game you're most excited for that's on this list. What are you looking forward to the most? And let's do it. Hey everyone, it's Andrew. This is supposed to be the next Star Wars game we're getting, Star Wars Zero Company, set to release in 2026. This one is being developed by Respawn in collaboration with BitReactor. It's a single-player turn-based strategy game heavily inspired by the XCOM series of games. In fact, a bunch of the developers that worked on this previously worked on the XCOM series, and it's set during the Clone Wars, but not on the front lines. Instead, your squad, which are heavily customizable and will evolve around your playstyle, work in the shadows of the Clone Wars on secret missions which you'll be leading.
Just like the simulation.
Now, even though yes, this is a strategy game, the developers have heavily stressed that they want it to have broad appeal, that they're trying to make it different to any strategy game that came previously, even though it's heavily inspired by the XCOM series. I believe they're aiming to create a much more cinematic experience than what we've previously had in other strategy games, and that's part of what's setting this game apart. But they're also not sacrificing this game's level of depth, and are saying the game will still appeal to a much more hardcore strategy audience. What I find super interesting about this one is that no two playthroughs are going to be the same. The decisions you make will have permanent effects on your playthrough, characters will die, and the game will evolve around your playstyle. I also got to previously speak to some of the Zero Company developers and ask them some cheeky questions about how that's going to work within the Star Wars canon. If everyone's story is kind of different, then how are they setting this in the Clone Wars? And they wouldn't really give me an answer, but I'm assuming there's going to be one canon playthrough, and then everything else that happens is just kind of your own interpretation of the events, which I think is great. I don't think Star Wars games need to necessarily follow the canon and have their place in that. Why can't Star Wars just be fun? Let's make Star Wars fun again. That's my goal. Yahoo! Customization is insane in this game though. For example, if you want your squad to just all be astromechs, you can do that. And I believe you start each playthrough with the game's main characters, but then can evolve as you play through potentially. But if they're allowing you to have a full squad of astromechs, I don't see why you wouldn't also be able to have a full squad of clone troopers, maybe even a full squad of Sith Lords. I want to lead Gungan squad into battle. That's my goal for Star Wars Zero Company. I'm renaming my game to Darth Jar Jar Company. I believe there's also a bunch of difficulty options. For example, you can have permadeath as a setting where if a character dies in your playthrough, they will remain dead forever. You can fail a playthrough of the story as well, I believe. But we haven't really received all the nitty-gritty details just yet. There's also a bunch of different planets, locations you'll be visiting throughout the galaxy, planets you can choose to travel to, and I believe certain missions you'll have to do, but then there'll also be others that are optional. This one's set to release in 2026, and overall, I'm excited for the customization. I'm excited for a new Star Wars strategy game, and I'm also hopefully excited for the option to play as a squad of Gungans. Wars Eclipse is another Star Wars game I'm actually hugely excited for, but we still know next to nothing about. The trailer for this one came out all the way back in 2021, and we've since learned that this trailer was created with the idea of attracting developers to the studio, Quantic Dream, to get people to come to the studio and work on this game. Quantic Dream are the same studio that's brought us games such as Detroit Become Human, Beyond Two Souls, Heavy Rain, games which are all known for their intricate narrative storytelling, for the decisions you make in the game affecting the outcome of the narrative. And I think there was a lot of hype for this game when it was announced back in 2021, which has definitely died off now. But this is literally one of the most viewed trailers on the Star Wars YouTube channel, currently with 22 million views. This has more views than the Obi-Wan Kenobi trailers, than the Ahsoka trailers, and I believe than any other Star Wars gaming trailer on this channel. We did get an update from the developer just a few weeks ago that the game is still in development, that hopefully there's nothing to worry about, that they are still working on it behind the scenes, but it seems like it's going to be another few years before it actually gets released. My guess is 2027, 2028. In Star Wars Eclipse, you'll see the galaxy through the eyes of an ensemble cast of charismatic playable characters, each with their own morality, personality, motivations, and impact upon each other and the story at large. It's an action-adventure, multiple character branching narrative game set in the High Republic era, which I think is also exciting. I'm glad they're setting this outside the main Skywalker timeline, because in recent years especially, especially we haven't really had any games set outside of that. I think there are going to be some familiar faces in the game. For example, we see Master Yoda in the Jedi Council chambers in the trailer, but the game's going to feature all new characters and environments, places we've never been before, characters we've never met. And again, when it comes to Star Wars canon, I think there'll be one playthrough that fits within that, and then the other playthroughs and branching narratives and alternate endings, which I'm heavily assuming this game is going to have, will likely just be left to interpretation. Perhaps they'll chalk it up to the events went something like this, and maybe we don't actually know the true outcome. We do know that the game is partly set in the Outer Rim, in an uncharted section of the galaxy with never before seen species and planets to discover. There are also going to be some level of political themes which affect the outcome of peace in this part of the galaxy, so I'm really hoping they deliver something special and memorable here. It seems like they're setting up to do so, and I think Quantic Dream's previous games are all quite unique in their own way, so it'll be interesting to see how they bring those ideas and concepts to the Star Wars galaxy. Star Wars Jedi 3 is likely the most anticipated Star Wars game that we currently know about. We don't have an official title for the game yet that continues the story of Cal Kestis following the events of Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor, but I think we can guess that the game is likely going to release in 2027, considering in 2026 we're getting Zero Company, also partly developed by Respawn. What's interesting about Jedi 3 though is that back in April 2025, Respawn released a statement where they announced some unfortunate layoffs at the company, but also said this: within the Star Wars universe, we're excited to keep building new stories, with the next chapter of the Star Wars Jedi series aiming to raise the bar again for storytelling and gameplay. A lot of people, I think, up until this point believed that Jedi 3 was going to be the final Star Wars game made by Respawn, but now that they're using the word next, there's speculation that there could be more Star Wars games on the horizon beyond Jedi 3. Also interesting about Jedi 3 is that Stig Asmussen, the lead developer on Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor, is no longer at the company. He's moved on to create his own studio called Giant Skull, who are also developing a third-person action-adventure game. I don't think it's necessarily Star Wars related, but it'll likely be heavily influenced by the Jedi games. But I just hope that his absence here, and also some of the other layoffs that have happened at Respawn over the past few years, don't affect the quality of this game. I hope in a lot of ways he laid the foundations, Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor, I believe, being some of the best single-player Star Wars games ever made, for the remaining developers to then go on and make an epic third installation. These games are set between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, following the events of Order 66, following the downfall of the Republic and the Jedi Order. Cal is a Jedi in hiding, still on the run, still being hunted by the Empire and the Inquisitors, who are likely going to continue to hunt him and his friends in this game. My guess is he's going to be chilling somewhere with Merrin and also KOTOR, who's Bode's daughter, potentially trying to rebuild some form of the Jedi Order in the shadows. A lot of question marks also about how they're going to evolve the gameplay and combat in this game. Jedi Fallen Order gave us both single and double-bladed lightsaber combat, with Jedi Survivor taking that to another level with single, double, dual-wield, heavy stance, and blaster-wielding gameplay. So where do they go from here? How do they evolve this? That I'm not so sure of. I'm sure whatever it is, though, it's going to be pretty epic. A lot of question marks also around whether Cal Kestis is going to survive, considering we don't really know anything of his character following the Jedi games outside of the Jedi games. Does he survive? Is he around during A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back? Does he make it through the downfall of the Empire? Or is he going to meet his demise at the end of Jedi 3? Regardless of where they take this, I'm sure Jedi 3 is going to be heartbreaking in some way, as the previous two games have been some of the best storytelling done in the Disney era of Star Wars, in my opinion. And I'm sure this will be in the game, but I can't wait to see how many different ponchos Cal will be able to wear.
Poncho. Well, first thing I noticed is he's not wearing a poncho.
Cameron!
Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake has had one of the most troubled development cycles in recent years. The game was originally being developed by Aspyr Entertainment, who are most well known recently for making all of the Star Wars ports, bringing classic Star Wars games to modern consoles. They did Star Wars Bounty Hunter, they did the Battlefront Classic Collection. But then KOTOR at Aspyr was in choppy waters. In 2022, due to struggling development, the game was taken away from Aspyr and instead given to Saber Interactive, who are still still currently working on the remake. We got an official update semi-recently that this thing is still being developed, that Saber Interactive are currently still working on all games that have been previously announced to be in development at the studio, but I think a lot of fans are really skeptical of this one considering how much they love the original KOTOR. For some people, KOTOR is their favorite Star Wars game ever. The storytelling, the RPG elements, the twists and turns, the player choice that's allowed in this game, and even though now I think it does feel quite dated and old playing the original KOTOR, which is part of why I think it's getting a remake, I think everyone's just hoping that it will do justice to the original.
I've been looking forward to this.
Recently, we got a look at some leaked screenshots from Aspire's development on the game, and even though it was early days and they don't really tell you much, I think it's safe to say it kind of felt maybe a little rough around the edges, but I don't think there's really much to discern from some random screenshots like these. What's interesting about this one as well is that from what I can remember, the trailer initially released on the PlayStation YouTube channel, and it's been taken down. It's no longer there, and it's set to be a PlayStation and PC exclusive at launch, so no Xbox for KOTOR Remake. And just like Star Wars Eclipse, this one was announced over 4 years ago, and we've basically heard nothing or seen nothing of the game since. The teaser trailer doesn't really tell us much, apart from the fact Darth Revan's here. I think again, like Star Wars Eclipse, the trailer was likely made to attract people to the game, to get developers help working on the game. But according to the developers, the game is alive and well. So I guess with this one, we're just gonna have to be patient. For context as well, if you haven't played it, KOTOR is an RPG single-player style game set in the Old Republic era of Star Wars, which is essentially 25,000 years before the Battle of Yavin up until 1032, when the Galactic Republic was formed. The KOTOR game, I believe, is set in the year 3956 BBY, so let's just say roughly 4,000 years before A New Hope, before the prequels, before the Skywalker saga. The original game at the time of release in 2003 was revolutionary and is still to this day one of the highest rated Star Wars games ever made. Just look at all these scores. It's like 9 out of 10 and 90 plus everywhere. Has there ever been another Star Wars game that scored this highly? I think not. If you're a fan of the Uncharted series, then I think you're going to be excited for this up-and-coming Star Wars game. The newish developer, Skydance New Media, led by Amy Hennig, who's famous for her work on the Uncharted series, are currently working on an upcoming Star Wars game which was announced back in 2022. This is the same studio that's developing 1943 Rise of Hydra, which is a third-person action-adventure game set in the Marvel Universe where you'll play as multiple characters, namely Black Panther and Captain America. I believe these games are going to be a linear-style experience, heavily inspired by the Uncharted series, with platforming and combat mechanics and a heavily narrative-driven story. Some of you might also remember Project Ragtag, a cancelled game being worked on by Visceral Games and EA Studio. This was cancelled roughly back in 2018, but overall looked quite promising, and I believe this Skydance New Media Star Wars game is an evolution of what Amy Hennig was working on there. Think of things like third-person, action-adventure, immersive world, attention to detail, incredibly exciting and thrilling set pieces. That's the style of game I'd be expecting here. At the time of recording this video, we don't have a trailer, we don't have any gameplay or any real concrete details about this game, but I think an action-adventure, third-person, Uncharted-inspired Star Wars game is the kind of game I could really fall in love with. So there are rumors that there's a Total War Star Wars game currently in development at Creative Assembly. Apparently there are currently 3 Total War games in the pipeline, with an officially licensed Star Wars title being one of them. Now, Total War is essentially a turn-based real-time strategy series, with the first edition releasing all the way back in the year 2000. Since then, there have been multiple iterations, with the most recent Total War Pharaoh releasing in 2023. There's no official announcement of this game. These are just rumors that come from DualShockers.com. So picture this essentially, but Star Wars. Other Star Wars RTS games that might be comparable to this include Star Wars Galactic Battlegrounds, Star Wars Empire at War. Both of those are quite old now though. Empire at War releasing all the way back in 2006, nearly 20 years ago, so perhaps it's time for us to get a new real-time strategy Star Wars game. And Creative Assembly seemed like the perfect fit for a developer who could pull this off. Now, Renegades is an upcoming Star Wars-themed expansion for Destiny 2. This isn't a Star Wars DLC, rather a Star Wars-inspired DLC, whatever that means. But essentially, in this entire expansion, you won't be following a Star Wars narrative. The events of this don't take place in the Star Wars galaxy. It's simply inspired by the Star Wars galaxy. This expansion is releasing on the 2nd of December 2025, and is essentially, from what I can remember, the only real Star Wars gaming release of this year, apart apart from the Fortnite Star Wars events. I think you can definitely see the inspiration of Star Wars in this gameplay, in these trailers. But I do have to say, even though I guess this could be cool for Destiny fans, this isn't necessarily the kind of Star Wars experience Star Wars gamers are looking for. And yes, the world of Destiny, just like a lot of other sci-fi, is heavily inspired by Star Wars, now even more so they certainly go hand in hand. But I guess it will be cool on some level to explore these Star Wars themed locations in Destiny. Apparently the missions in this expansion will take you across 3 planets and 6 maps inspired by iconic Star Wars locations. There's also new energy-based weapons being added that are inspired by Star Wars blasters, but I'd love to know what you guys think of this expansion. It's clearly also Destiny trying to get more players onto Destiny, trying to bring more Star Wars fans over to Destiny, which I guess could be cool. Maybe I'll check it out, but I'd love to know what you think of this. And which Star Wars game that I've mentioned you're most excited for? Let me know in the comments. Still no Battlefront 3. That's the Star Wars game I'm most looking forward to, even though it doesn't exist yet. Also, if you want to see every upcoming Marvel game that's currently in development, watch this video here. Come follow me on Instagram, Twitter, join my Discord and TikTok, and thanks for watching this. Always remember,
stay bombastic.